A 6-year-old boy knocked desperately on a giant biker's door, tears streaming down his face. "They bullied my mama," he sobbed. "She's crying and won't stop." What the massive biker did next shocked the entire neighborhood, but no one imagined what would come next. If this story touches your heart, like this video and comment below. Your support means everything. Oak Ridge Lane was one of those picture-perfect suburban streets in Cedar Falls, Oregon. White picket fences, manicured lawns, minivans and driveways. Everyone knew everyone, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. At the end of the street, slightly apart from the cookie-cutter houses, sat a modest, ranch-style home that belonged to Marcus Titan Reeves. Titan was 65 years old, 6'7", and weighed 300 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. His arms were covered in military tattoos, Marine Corps insignia, names of fallen brothers, coordinates of battles most people had never heard of. His gray beard reached his chest, and his presence could fill a room without him saying a word. He'd served 3 tours in Vietnam and came home to a country that didn't want him. The Iron Guard Riders, his motorcycle club, became his family when his real family had turned their backs. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Titan was in his garage working on his 1973 Harley Davidson when he heard it, frantic knocking on his front door. Not the casual knock of a neighbor or delivery person, but the desperate hammering of someone in trouble. He wiped grease from his hands and walked to the door, his heavy boots echoing on the hardwood floor. When he opened it, he found a small boy standing on his porch, maybe 6 years old, with messy brown hair, a tear-stained face, and eyes red from crying. "Please, sir," the boy gasped between sobs. "Please help. They bullied my mama. She's crying and won't stop crying." Titan's first instinct was to look around for the boy's parents, but the street was empty except for a few cars passing by. He knelt down, which wasn't easy at his size, to bring himself closer to the child's level. "Hey there, little man. What's your name?" Michael Chen. We live 3 houses down." The boy pointed with a shaking hand. The blue house with the white door. Titan knew the house. A widow lived there. He'd seen her occasionally. A small Asian woman who kept to herself, always looking tired and sad. He'd heard she'd lost her husband in Afghanistan a couple years back. "Michael, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Who bullied your mama?" Michael's words tumbled out in a rush. "Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Cooper and some other ladies. They were in the front yard talking real loud so Mama could hear. They said mean things. They said Mama was a gold digger who married Daddy for money even though Daddy didn't have any money. They said she doesn't belong here because she's different." They laughed at her accent. "And yesterday someone threw garbage on our porch and wrote bad words on our door." Titan felt cold anger settling in his chest. The kind that came from seeing the strong pick on the weak, the many gang up on the one. He'd seen it in the military, in the streets, in life, and he'd spent 65 years learning to hate it. "Is your mama home alone right now?" Michael nodded. "She locked herself in her room. She's been crying for hours. I tried to make her feel better, but she won't come out. I didn't know what to do. So I remember Daddy used to say if you're ever in real trouble, find someone big and strong who looks tough but has kind eyes. You're really big, and you have kind eyes, so I came here." Something in Titan's chest cracked. This kid's father had taught him well, even in death, that Marine was still protecting his family through the wisdom he'd passed on. "You did the right thing, Michael. Real brave of you. Now I'm gonna go talk to your mama, okay? And I'm gonna make sure nobody bothers her anymore. Promise?" Michael looked up at him with hope so desperate it hurt to see. "On my honor as a Marine," Titan said. "Nobody messes with a Marine's family. Not on my watch." He grabbed his leather vest, the one with the Iron Guard Riders patches, the Marine Corps emblem, and the POW MIA flag, and followed Michael down the street. As they walked, Titan noticed curtains moving in windows, neighbors watching. Some of those same neighbors who'd stood by while a widow was harassed and humiliated. The Chen house was modest, but well-maintained. Someone had indeed spray-painted obscenities on the white door, crude, hateful words. Garbage was scattered across the porch. Titan's jaw tightened. Michael unlocked the door with a key he wore on a string around his neck. "Mama? Mama, I brought help!" No answer. Just the sound of muffled crying from down the hallway. Titan stepped inside carefully, aware that his size and appearance might frighten an already traumatized woman. "Mrs. Chen? My name is Marcus Reeves. Your son Michael came to me for help. I'm a veteran, like your husband was. I just want to talk." The crying stopped. A moment of silence. Then a door creaked open, and a small woman emerged, maybe 5 feet tall, with long black hair and eyes swollen from hours of tears. She wore simple clothes and looked utterly defeated. "You're the motorcycle man," she said quietly, her voice carrying a slight accent. "I've seen you. Michael, you shouldn't bother the neighbors." "He didn't bother me, ma'am," Titan said gently. "He did exactly what his father taught him to do. He asked for help when his family was in trouble." Sarah Chen looked at the massive biker standing in her living room and felt a confusing mix of fear and hope. Everything about him screamed danger. The size, the tattoos, the leather, the scars. But his eyes were kind, and Michael was holding his hand like he'd found a protector. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us. Your husband was a Marine. I'm a Marine. That makes you family," Titan said simply. "And what I hear is that some people in this neighborhood have been treating you poorly. Real poorly. I'd like to hear about it if you're willing to tell me." Sarah sank onto the couch, exhausted. Michael climbed up beside her, pressing close. And slowly, haltingly, she told the story. She'd met David Chen when he was stationed in South Korea. They'd fallen in love, married, and moved to the United States when his service ended. They'd been happy in Cedar Falls at first. David had worked construction, saved money, bought this house. Then came the deployment to Afghanistan, the knock on the door, the folded flag. For the first year after David's death, the neighbors had been kind. Casseroles, condolences, offers of help. But kindness had an expiration date, apparently. Once the funeral was over and the sympathy cards stopped coming, Sarah was just the foreign widow who didn't quite fit in. "It started small," Sarah said. "Whispers when I walked by, people stopping their conversations when I approached. Then Mrs. Patterson started spreading rumors that I had married David for citizenship, for money, that I was living off government benefits while real Americans struggled. None of it was true. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night, waitressing during the day. I barely sleep, but people believed her." "And it got worse?" Titan prompted gently. Sarah nodded, fresh tears falling. "Last week, someone left a note in my mailbox telling me to go back where I came from. Then the garbage on the porch, the spray paint. And yesterday, Mrs. Patterson and her friends stood in their yard, talking loud enough for me to hear, laughing about how pathetic I was, how I didn't belong here, how my son would grow up to be a failure because he had one of those mothers." Michael pressed his face against his mother's arm, crying again. "They made Mama cry. They're mean. I hate them." "Don't hate them, baby," Sarah said automatically, even through her own tears. Hate is sometimes the appropriate response to cruelty," Titan said quietly. "Your boy has every right to be angry, Mrs. Chen, and so do you. What these people are doing isn't just mean. It's harassment, it's racist, and it needs to stop. What can I do?" Sarah's voice broke. "I'm nobody. I have no power. I can't move. I can barely afford this house. I can't fight them. They're all friends with each other, and I'm alone." "You're not alone anymore," Titan said. He pulled out his phone. "Mrs. Chen, I'm gonna make some calls. By tomorrow morning, things are gonna be different. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I promise you won't face this alone. Is that okay with you?" Sarah looked at this giant stranger who'd walked into her life because her 6-year-old son had knocked on his door. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she was drowning and he was offering a hand. "Okay," she whispered. Titan spent the next hour making calls. The first was to his brothers in the Iron Guard Riders, 8 men who'd ridden together for decades, all veterans, all men who understood honor and protecting the defenseless. The second call was to his lawyer friend, who specialized in harassment cases. The third was to a local news reporter who owed him a favor. By the time he left the Chen house that evening, promising Michael he'd be back in the morning, Titan had a plan. It wasn't about revenge or violence. It was about something more powerful. Public shame and community pressure applied to those who deserved it. That night, Sarah Chen slept better than she had in weeks. Not because her problems were solved, but because for the first time since David died, she felt like someone had her back. The next morning dawned clear and cold. At 8 a.m., the rumble of motorcycle engines shattered the usual quiet of Oak Ridge Lane. 9 Harley-Davidsons rolled slowly down the street and parked in front of the Chen house, Titan's Iron Guard Riders, all present and accounted for. They were an intimidating sight. 9 large men in their 60s and 70s, covered in leather and military patches, moving with the kind of coordinated purpose that came from decades of brotherhood. Neighbors came out onto their porches, staring. Some looked nervous. Others, like Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Cooper, looked indignant. Titan knocked on Sarah's door. When she opened it, looking confused and worried, he smiled. "Morning, Mrs. Chen. We're here to help clean up your property and to make a statement. For the next hour, the Iron Guard riders worked. They pressure washed the spray paint off the door. They cleaned the porch. They repaired the mailbox that had been damaged. And they did it all in complete silence, their presence speaking louder than any words could. Mrs. Patterson marched over, her face red with anger. "What do you think you're doing? You can't just show up and—" Titan turned to face her, and his sheer size made her take an involuntary step back. But his voice was calm, almost conversational. "We're helping a neighbor, a widow of a Marine who served our country, a woman who's been harassed and bullied by people who should know better. I don't know what lies she told you, but—" "No lies, ma'am," Titan said. "I spoke to several other neighbors last night. Good people who were disgusted by what they've seen but were too afraid to speak up. They told me everything. The rumors you spread, the public harassment, the racism." "Racism?" Mrs. Patterson sputtered. "I'm not racist. I just think she should—" "Go back where she came from?" Titan's voice got quieter, which somehow made it more menacing.
"See, that's the thing, ma'am. She came from South Korea, where she met her husband, an American Marine who died serving this country. She has every right to be here, more right than most. And the fact that you've been making her life hell, that says a lot more about you than it does about her."
A small crowd had gathered, neighbors watching the confrontation. Titan turned to address them all, his voice carrying down the street. "My name is Marcus Reeves. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. These men behind me are all veterans. We served this country so people could live in peace and safety. When we heard that one of our own, a Marine's widow, was being harassed in her own neighborhood, we couldn't stand by. Mrs. Sarah Chen is under the protection of the Iron Guard riders now. Anyone who harasses her, spreads rumors about her, or makes her or her son feel unwelcome will answer to us." "Are you threatening us?" someone called out. "No threats," Titan said. "Just facts. We'll be checking in regularly. We'll be visible. And if the harassment continues, we'll make sure everyone knows exactly who's responsible. Social media, local news, everywhere. Because bullying a widow? That's about as low as it gets." Mrs. Cooper stepped forward, looking less confident than usual. "We were just talking. Free speech." "Free speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences," said a new voice. A woman in her 40s with a professional demeanor stepped forward. Jennifer Mills, the reporter Titan had called. She had a cameraman with her. "I'm with Channel 7 News. We're doing a story on harassment of military widows in suburban communities. Would anyone like to comment?" Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Cooper suddenly looked sick. Being gossipy neighbors was one thing. Being exposed on the news as people who bullied a war widow was quite another. "I think we may have misunderstood some things," Mrs. Patterson said quickly, her voice much smaller now. "Perhaps we were too quick to judge." "Perhaps?" Titan's eyebrow rose. Mrs. Patterson swallowed hard, looked at Sarah standing in her doorway with Michael beside her, and for the first time seemed to really see them, not as outsiders or targets, but as people. As a mother and child who'd lost everything and were just trying to survive. "I'm sorry," Mrs. Patterson said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. "I was wrong. We were wrong. Mrs. Chen, I apologize." Sarah stood frozen, not sure how to respond. Michael, however, had no such hesitation. "You made my mama cry," he shouted, his small voice fierce. "You're mean, and I don't forgive you." "Michael," Sarah started, but Titan held up a hand. "The boy's got a right to his feelings, Mrs. Chen. Forgiveness is earned, not demanded." He looked at Mrs. Patterson. "You want to make this right? Start by making sure everyone in this neighborhood knows the truth. That Mrs. Chen is a valued member of this community. That her husband died serving this country. That she deserves respect." Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. I'll talk to people. Set the record straight." Over the next week, something remarkable happened in Oak Ridge Lane. The story ran on the local news. A positive piece about veterans helping over the next week. Something remarkable happened on Oak Ridge Lane. The story ran on the local news. A positive piece about veterans helping military families, featuring Sarah Chen and the Iron Guard riders. The segment showed the contrast. Sarah's quiet dignity as she spoke about losing her husband and the harassment she'd endured afterward. Then Titan and his brothers, these imposing men in leather, speaking with surprising eloquence about honor, duty, and protecting those who'd sacrificed. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Neighbors who'd stayed silent during Sarah's harassment suddenly found their voices. The Homeowners Association formally apologized and issued a statement condemning discrimination. Local businesses offered Sarah better job opportunities. The elementary school where Michael attended made him Student of the Week for his bravery in seeking help for his mother. But for Sarah, the most meaningful change was simpler than all of that. On Saturday morning, there was a knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Mrs. Patterson standing there, looking uncomfortable but determined. She held a casserole dish. "I made you dinner," Mrs. Patterson said quietly. "It's not much, and I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I wanted to start somewhere." Sarah stared at the dish, then at the woman who'd made her life miserable for months. Part of her wanted to slam the door, but she thought of what Titan had said about giving people a chance to be better. "Thank you," Sarah said carefully, taking the dish. "That's very kind." "I was wrong," Mrs. Patterson said, and tears filled her eyes. "I was angry about my own life. My husband lost his job, money's tight, I felt like the world was unfair. And instead of dealing with my own problems, I took it out on you. That was cruel and cowardly. I'm truly sorry." Sarah saw something genuine in the other woman's face. "Apology accepted. Would you like to come in for coffee?" Mrs. Patterson looked surprised, then grateful. "I'd like that very much." Meanwhile, 3 houses down, Titan sat in his garage with Michael, teaching the 6-year-old about motorcycles. The boy was fascinated, asking a million questions, his earlier tears replaced by excitement and wonder. "When I grow up, I'm going to be big like you," Michael declared, "and I'm going to protect people too." "You're already protecting people, little man," Titan said. "You protected your mama by asking for help. That took more courage than most adults ever show. Do you think my daddy would be proud of me?" Titan's throat tightened. "Your daddy is proud of you. I guarantee it. You did what he taught you. You found help when you needed it. You stood up for your family. That's what Marines do." Michael beamed at that, and Titan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose beyond just surviving. This kid needed a male role model, and Sarah needed support. The Iron Guard Riders had found a new mission. That evening, Titan's phone rang. It was Danny Hawk Morrison, another member of the Iron Guard Riders who'd been at the Chen house that first day. "Titan, you got a minute? I've been thinking about what we did for Mrs. Chen." "Yeah? There's gotta be other military families struggling out there. Widows, kids of deployed soldiers, veterans dealing with PTSD who need support. What if we made this official? What if the Iron Guard Riders became a veteran family protection organization? We've got the manpower, the visibility, the connections." Titan leaned back in his chair, considering. "You know what, Hawk? I think you're onto something. Let's call a club meeting. See what the brothers think." 2 days later, all 9 members of the Iron Guard Riders gathered at Titan's house. They sat around his living room, men ranging from 58 to 72, all veterans, all with stories of their own struggles coming home from war. Titan laid out the proposal. "We've spent years writing for ourselves, for brotherhood, for therapy. What if we rode for something bigger? What if we became advocates and protectors for military families in crisis? Not vigilantes. We work with law enforcement, social services, legitimate channels, but we be the visible presence, the deterrent, the support system." "I'm in," said Preacher, a former Army chaplain. "Been looking for purpose beyond just weekend rides. This feels right." One by one, the others agreed. They drew up a charter, contacted veteran organizations, set up a website and hotline. Within 2 weeks, the Iron Guard Riders had officially become Iron Guard Family Services, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting military families in need. Their first official case came from a phone call 3 weeks after helping Sarah Chen. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Titan answered groggily, not recognizing the number. "Is this Marcus Reeves? The Iron Guard Riders?" A woman's voice shaking with fear. "Yes, ma'am. What's wrong?" "My name is Jennifer Ramirez. I'm a Marine Corps widow in Portland. I saw your story on the news about helping Mrs. Chen. I need help. My landlord is trying to evict me illegally because I complained about the broken heat. It's 40 degrees inside, and I have 3 kids. I don't know what to do." Titan was wide awake now. "Ma'am, give me your address. We'll be there in the morning. Have you documented the heating issues?" "I've been taking pictures, keeping emails, everything." "Good. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything. We're gonna help you." 6 hours later, 4 Iron Guard Riders pulled up to a rundown apartment complex in East Portland. Jennifer Ramirez was a small Hispanic woman in her 30s with 3 children ranging from 4 to 10. Her apartment was indeed freezing, and the landlord, a man named Craig Henderson, had been ignoring her complaints for weeks. When Henderson showed up to harass Jennifer about rent, he found 4 large bikers sitting in her living room. His confidence evaporated quickly. "Mr. Henderson," Titan said pleasantly, We need to talk about tenant rights and Oregon housing law. See, my friend here," he gestured to Hawk, "is a retired lawyer, and he's real interested in your violation of habitability standards." Henderson tried to bluster, but when Hawk calmly explained the legal consequences of illegal eviction and failure to provide heat, the landlord's tone changed dramatically. Within 3 days, the heat was fixed, and Henderson had dropped the eviction proceedings. Word spread. More calls came in. A veteran being discriminated against at work. A military spouse being denied benefits. A Gold Star mother being scammed by a contractor. Each case brought the Iron Guard riders out, and each time their combination of intimidating presence and actual legal knowledge solved problems that had seemed insurmountable. Back on Oak Ridge Lane, Sarah Chen watched the news coverage of the Iron Guard's expanded mission with tears in her eyes. Michael sat beside her, pointing excitedly every time Titan appeared on screen. "That's our friend," Michael said proudly. "He helped us, and now he helps everybody." Sarah's life had transformed. The harassment had completely stopped. Several neighbors had apologized and now treated her with respect. She'd gotten a better job at a local hospital. Someone had seen the news story and called to offer her a position in their administrative office. For the first time since David died, she felt hope for the future. One Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Titan standing there with the entire Iron Guard crew and about 20 other bikers she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Chen," Titan said with a slight smile, "we were wondering if you and Michael would like to come to a memorial ride. We're honoring fallen Marines this weekend. Thought your husband David should be included." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You do that?" "Ma'am, your husband was one of us. His name deserves to be spoken, his sacrifice remembered. Plus, I promised Michael I'd teach him about motorcycles. Figured he should see what a real ride looks like." Michael was already jumping up and down with excitement. "Can we, Mama, please?" That Sunday, Sarah and Michael stood on the roadside as over 100 motorcycles rode past in formation, each bike carrying the name of a fallen Marine. When they passed the reviewing stand, Titan's deep voice called out over a loudspeaker. "Staff Sergeant David Chen, United States Marine Corps, killed in action, Afghanistan, 2021, gone but never forgotten." The riders all raised their right fists in salute. Sarah wept openly, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not grief. For 2 years, she'd felt invisible, forgotten, dismissed. Now an entire community of veterans was honoring her husband's memory, claiming him as one of their own, and by extension, claiming her and Michael as family. After the ride, there was a gathering at the Veterans Hall. Michael ran around with other military kids, finally able to play without the weight of grief and isolation. Sarah found herself surrounded by other military widows who understood her pain, who offered friendship and support without judgment. Titan approached her with a smile. "You doing okay, Mrs. Chen? Please, call me Sarah. And yes, I'm better than okay. I'm happy. I haven't felt happy in so long, I almost forgot what it felt like." 6 months after Michael knocked on Titan's door, Oak Ridge Lane looked much the same on the surface. Same houses, same lawns, same quiet suburban appearance. But everything had changed. Sarah Chen no longer walked with her head down. She joined the neighborhood watch committee and had become friends with several neighbors, including, surprisingly, Mrs. Patterson. The two women had discovered they had more in common than either expected, and what started as an awkward apology had grown into genuine friendship. Michael thrived. His grades improved, he made friends, and he spent every Saturday with Titan, learning about motorcycles, listening to stories about his father's Marine Corps service, and being mentored by a man who'd stepped into the role of surrogate grandfather without hesitation. The Iron Guard family services had grown beyond anyone's expectations. They'd helped 43 military families in 6 months. They'd partnered with legal aid societies, veteran organizations, and social services. Their model was being copied by other motorcycle clubs across the country. But for Titan, the most meaningful change was personal. He'd spent 20 years after Vietnam feeling like his service meant nothing, like society had discarded him. The Iron Guard riders had given him brotherhood, but Sarah and Michael had given him something even more valuable: purpose. One evening, Sarah invited Titan over for dinner. She'd become an excellent cook, combining Korean and American cuisines in ways that delighted everyone. As they sat around the table, Sarah, Michael, and Titan, it felt like family. "I have news," Sarah said, smiling nervously. "I've been accepted into nursing school. It's a 2-year program. I can do it while working part-time, and there's financial aid for military widows. I'll finally be able to build a real career, give Michael a better future." That's wonderful, Titan said, genuinely proud. Your husband would be so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah said, her eyes serious. 6 months ago, I was ready to give up. I thought about leaving Cedar Falls, maybe even leaving the country. I felt so alone and defeated. Then Michael knocked on your door, and everything changed. Michael's the hero, Titan said. Kid showed more courage than most adults ever will. Michael, who'd been quietly eating, looked up. Can I ask you something, Titan? Anything, little man. Would you be my grandpa? Not like a real grandpa, but like a chosen one? Mama says family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. You showed up, so I want you to be my grandpa. Titan felt his eyes burning. In 65 years of life, through war and loss and hardship, he'd learned to control his emotions. But this 6-year-old boy had just broken through every defense. I'd be honored, Titan said, his voice rough. I'd be real honored, Michael. They finished dinner, and later, Titan stood on Sarah's porch, preparing to leave. She walked him to the door. Thank you, she said quietly, not just for helping us, but for giving us back our dignity, for making us feel like we belong, for showing Michael what good men look like. You gave me something too, Titan said. You gave me a reason to be better than I was, to use what's left of my life for something that matters. As Titan rode home on his Harley, the Oregon evening cool against his face, he thought about the strange path his life had taken, from a kid in the Bronx to the jungles of Vietnam to the hard years after the war, to finding brotherhood with the Iron Guard riders. And now, at 65 years old, becoming a grandfather to a boy who wasn't his blood, but was absolutely his family. The next morning, there was a knock on Titan's door. He opened it to find Michael standing there with a drawing. I made this for you, Michael said, handing it over. It was a crayon drawing of 2 figures, one very large, one very small, standing next to a motorcycle. Above them, Michael had written in careful letters, My grandpa Titan. He saved my mama. He is a hero. Titan hung that drawing in his garage, right next to his Marine Corps flag and his photos of fallen brothers. It became his most treasured possession. Over the following years, the Iron Guard family services continued to grow. They helped hundreds of military families. They prevented evictions, stopped harassment, provided mentorship, created support networks. Michael grew up strong and confident, eventually joining the Marines himself, following in his father's footsteps, but this time with a whole community behind him. Sarah became a registered nurse and eventually opened a free clinic specifically for veterans and their families. Mrs. Patterson became one of her volunteers, the 2 women's friendship a testament to the power of redemption and second chances. And Titan? He lived to see his 82nd birthday, surrounded by his Iron Guard brothers, by Sarah and Michael, by the dozens of families they'd helped over the years. When he finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, over 500 people attended his funeral. Veterans, military families, people whose lives he'd touched. Michael Chen, now a Marine sergeant himself, gave the eulogy. He told the story of the day he'd knocked on a giant biker's door, terrified and desperate, and how that moment had changed everything. He talked about courage, about chosen family, about how sometimes the biggest hearts live in the most intimidating packages. At the end of the service, the Iron Guard riders, now led by younger veterans who'd been trained by the originals, rode past in formation. Each bike carried a sign with one word: honor, duty, courage, family, protect, serve. And in the front of the procession, riderless, was Titan's 1973 Harley-Davidson, restored to perfect condition. Attached to the handlebars was a laminated drawing, crayon on paper, faded but still legible, showing a very large man and a very small boy standing next to a motorcycle. Above them, in careful letters, My grandpa Titan. He saved my mama. He is a hero. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're the people no one expects, the ones who've been counted out, looked down on, dismissed. And sometimes all it takes to change the world is a 6-year-old boy with tears on his face and the courage to knock on a door and ask for help. The legacy of that knock echoed through decades, through hundreds of lives saved, through a community transformed. All because one giant biker with kind eyes heard a desperate plea and decided to show up. That's what heroes do. They show up.